evening, a very warm welcome to this edition of Startup Central. I'm Vikram coming to you live from my home here in Mumbai, and this is the one-stop show which gives you the latest buzz in the world of startups, in technology, all the businesses that are causing disruption out there, and boy do we need them in times like this. Of course, we are always open for ideas and suggestions, and if you'd like to pitch in with some of those, you can definitely write into us. Our email ID is suc@etnow.tv. All right, now let's talk about space technology. Now, this is a growing space, and who would have thought a few years ago, because this was essentially the domain of the center, and the government had almost complete monopoly over this. But now you're seeing so many more private players coming in, and startup businesses are more and more interested. In fact, at an ISRO event, an event organized by the Indian Space Research Organization, was a session, and there we heard Anand Mahindra of Mahindra & Mahindra speak about the next big gold rush, which he says is going to be in space technology when it comes to businesses. So against that backdrop, it's very important to understand this particular Bangalore-based startup, which is not very old. In fact, 1.5 years is all it's been in the business for, but yet now it's managed its seed funding round, and it's bringing in quite a lot of money. $5 million has been raised, and this, of course, is a round that has been led by venture capitalists like Bloom Ventures and Lightspeed India Partners and GrowX Ventures, from what we are understanding. But what is the line of work that Pixxel is in? And they're claiming to be India's first Earth imaging satellite startup. To tell us more about this on this edition of Startup Central, let me welcome the CEO of the company, Awais Ahmed. So great to have you with us, Awais. This is great news. $5 million getting raised now. So it seems like it's all systems go for a takeoff for this constellation of satellites that you want to put up and generate all these Earth images. Tell us what the plan is.
In any geography in the world every 24 hours, be it a farm that someone is tracking or crop health, or be it oil and gas pipelines, or be it air pollution or water pollution levels. Our satellites will be able to capture changes occurring in the planet every 24 hours when we fully deploy it by 2023. So that's the plan, to have enough satellites up there and get this data to provide up-to-date information about our planet.
All right, that audio didn't come through very clearly, Awais. So yes, I understand the preliminary domain under which this is happening. Hearty congratulations going out if I wasn't very clear, very audible to you right at the top. But yes, $700,000 has come in that pre-seed funding round from Techstars and others. And now with the $5 million that are coming in now, tell us what the immediate plan is. How are these funds that you have at your disposal are going to be immediately deployed? Because you've been growing fast in a year and a half, haven't you?
We have. I think it's been a good journey, but it's also been very fast. We started manufacturing the first satellite with the pre-seed round last year. By December, we had completed the manufacturing of that satellite, and we are close to the launch of the first satellite. But with the new funds coming in, the $5 million, from Lightspeed, Bloom, and GrowX, the plan is, I think, threefold. One is to expand the team so that we have all capability we need in-house to design and integrate the satellites. The second would be to build a better version of the first satellite that we're building, which also functions as a backup to the first satellite, because we're dealing with space. In case something goes wrong, we need to not have all our eggs in one basket. And I think the third would be to build a robust data platform which makes it easy for anyone to use our satellite data. So I think, it would be threefold: expansion of the team, sending 2 satellites up there, and building the data platform that will enable anyone to sort of use satellite imagery for their applications.
Right, so Awais, the idea, the business is to get these Earth images through a satellite constellation. That's the plan that you're working towards. And those images, they're also going to be analyzed. So there is a two-pronged approach. It's not just about getting the images, it's also about analyzing them. Tell us about the business model that you've been able to create, and have you kind of tweaked it as you went along in the period that you've been in existence?
I think, yeah, the business plan is twofold. One is we get these images down from the satellites, store them on the cloud, and anyone anywhere in the world can access them. They pay for this data and they get this data. They can do what they want with it. But the second is more interesting. It's that we're building a software platform that will enable not only geospatial developers, but anyone with basic knowledge of working with softwares to use satellite imagery and get any applications out of it. Just to give an example, anyone can log into the website, they can select a farm that they want to monitor, and they can drag and drop models which tell them how the crop health is doing or how the soil health is doing. So it's I think a two-pronged thing here. It's getting down the data is one aspect of it, but then what happens when the data is down, that's where things get interesting. And in terms of the business model, before we even started building or manufacturing these satellites, what we did is we reached out to companies and organizations around the globe that used satellite data today. We asked them if the kind of data that we are providing would be a step up to what they're currently using. Will they pay for it? What are their pain points? And what we got to know from these companies, be it in North America, South America, or Europe, was that there definitely is a need for a much better resolution or kind of data that Pixxel will provide. And not only that, the problem is there's not enough easy to use software platforms that can let them take this data and get crop health, for example, or oil leakages or gas leakages. So that's the plan, not just get down the data, but also make it as widespread to use as possible.
And already, Awais, I understand you've lined up customers. Customers like Satshore and SkyMet are there on board, and they're going to buy your data in India. And then there are other global agriculture, oil and gas, and weather tracking companies. So if you can give us a sense of the kind of companies that you're likely to work with to provide your data for, and the kind of uses it's going to be put to. You gave us an instance, but if you can give just broaden that a little for us to understand exactly the purposes to which this kind of exercise, this kind of business can yield.
So I think there's agriculture would be a big aspect of what you can do with satellite imagery. There are a host of these companies, be it in North America, South America, or anywhere in the world for that matter, that have millions of acres of farmland that they need to be able to track, and they can't do that with drones because millions of acres spread apart in different countries is not possible logistically, or with IoT sensors for that matter, which is where satellite imagery comes in. And as I said before and touched upon it, what our imagery can enable them to do is they can keep from the moment of sowing their seed to the time that the crops yield, we'll be able to tell them at each stage as to how their farm is doing, what the soil conditions are for them to be able to sow these seeds, what the crop health is when it's growing, or even predict what the yield is going to be before it even is there. We can also identify areas where there might be under irrigation or over irrigation for anyone to go out and check that out and correct that. The other would be climate change is a big industry that's coming up, the climate economy. So the oil and gas companies would be one. These natural gas companies have pipelines spread across entire nation lines, and when a leak occurs somewhere in a very deserted area where there are no people, it sometimes takes a lot of time, which is financial loss to the company as well as devastating harm to the environment. And to be able to track these with satellites, no matter how deserted the area is, what we will enable them to do. And one thing that when we were studying at BITS, Delhi and Gurgaon were about 4 hours away from the campus, and they were some of the most polluted cities in the world. Where were these effluents or poisonous gases coming from? What is causing this air pollution, or what is causing water pollution? To be able to track these emissions of poisonous gases into both air as well as water is something that our satellites can be able to do, no matter which geography they are situated in. These are the ones that we're going after, but then there's a multitude of other use cases as well. In mining, we'll be able to identify which minerals are present where, and even keep a track on the mining activities, because a lot of time mining leads to a lot of illegal logging as well as devastation of forests. So you can keep a track on that using our satellite imagery. There's also other applications, be it urban monitoring and road monitoring and things like that. But that's what we are focusing on.
All right, so I see a lot of activity just in the lower orbit above Earth, which is a distance of around 2,000 kilometers. That's where a lot of startups are concentrating their businesses. Is that the area that you're going to focus on? And do you see many more startups get into a similar space? Because even while you were talking about agriculture, I was thinking about the very recent problem that we had with locusts, those huge swarms attacking our farmlands. And one was trying to assess the kind of damage, the kind of movement that these swarms of locusts have. All of that could be assessed and in time. So perhaps it's in that region, just 2,000 kilometers, that entire area around Earth, because higher up you have the big communication satellites. So I'm guessing that this is where, a lot of the satellites are going to be concentrated. Is that right?
Correct. So I think, yeah, we are moving away from having these huge, bulky communication satellites in the geostationary orbit, which is about 36,000 kilometers, to the lower Earth orbit, which is, below 2,000 kilometers. And the reason for that is, I think it's easier to build small satellites, which are much more inexpensive, that you can put lower to Earth. And it's also cheaper to launch them to the lower Earth orbit. It costs a lot more to put them in a geostationary orbit. So having them as close to Earth as possible is something that, any startup can do now with not a lot of money, as it would have taken them earlier. So I think keeping the costs of manufacturing as well as launch low is what is enabling that. But I think in the short term, focusing on the low Earth economy does make sense for especially a growing ecosystem like India. But going ahead, there's a whole lot of opportunity beyond that as well. NASA is working with a lot of startups in the US, for a trans-lunar economy, setting up space stations and other things across the moon. And going ahead, there's going to be interplanetary missions where private companies will work with the government agencies like ISRO or NASA. But as of now, we are seeing a lot of startups mainly focusing on the lower Earth orbit because it's just easier to get there and showcase your proof of concept, so as to say, without spending a lot of money.
Awais, this is fascinating because like you started off by saying as well that today's satellites are much smaller. There is a miniaturization of these satellites, not those huge bulky things floating above us. And also when it comes to affordability of satellites, that has come down as well. So it's fairly within reach for a lot of businesses. So I'm just wondering, when you're talking about a startup which is as new as yours, when you're investing in technology, some of it is based in artificial intelligence as well. Give us a sense of the investments and what has gone into it so far.
I think you have to spend on the manufacturing of the satellite itself, then you have to pay to put up these satellites or other hardware up in space, and then there's the operational costs of the ground stations that you need to keep running to communicate with this satellite. So I think it would be these three aspects. You can build about a 1 kilogram or a 2 kilogram satellite about the size of a small shoebox, 10 centimeter cube, for about less than 50 lakh rupees today, which would have cost like 500 crores in a decade or two before. So on the lower front, you can build it for about tens of lakhs of rupees to instead of building these huge satellites that are the size of the room or the size of an entire school bus, you can build them the size of a small refrigerator or a wardrobe, and the costs are coming down and down. You can build and launch a very advanced satellite for less than $10 million today, which would have cost otherwise hundreds of millions of dollars before. So like the cost ranges between building it for about $100,000 to about 10 million. But then it depends on how complicated and how advanced you want to make it. But what's also making this easier and the cost lower is people are not building, they're just taking these off-the-shelf components, off-the-shelf boards that are available and just putting them into a satellite and putting them in orbit. You don't need to build space-hardened or radiation-hardened or military-grade components anymore, especially if it's the lower Earth orbit. So I think it's been a very gradual change since the 2010s, which has enabled us to build these satellites for as cheap as tens of lakhs of rupees today instead of hundreds of crores.
Awais, you and your your co-founder, how exactly did you spot the opportunity over here? Because you were already studying, you hadn't even graduated, and already you're talking about launching satellites using Soyuz rockets, and these are small, very affordable. So the change, of course, has started to happen in recent times, but you've jumped in almost immediately. So how did you manage to do that?
So I think like Kshitij and I, we met in this team called Hyperloop India. SpaceX, the company founded by Elon Musk, it organized an annual competition where they had about a 1 mile long vacuum tube near their headquarters, and universities around the world had to build futuristic mode of vehicle that could travel at nearly the speed of sounds inside that vacuum tube. And Kshitij and I, we were part of Hyperloop India, where we built India's first functioning Hyperloop pod prototype. Took it to Los Angeles, presented to Elon Musk and the team. So we had that bit of experience, and visiting the SpaceX headquarters rekindled both our loves for space that we had since growing up. But after coming back, we had seen what competitions can do. They provide us a deadline, they provide a very motivated environment for even student teams to be able to participate in. And we decided we would participate in this competition called the IBM Watson AI X Prize. Essentially, you had to use artificial intelligence to tackle some of humanity's more pressing problems. And Kshitij, my co-founder, and I, we decided to use satellite imagery and artificial intelligence to tackle some problems we had firsthand seen. We were studying in Rajasthan, illegal mining was very rampant. Satellite imagery provided a way for us to keep a track of what's being illegally mined, where it is being transported. And as I mentioned before, Delhi and Gurgaon were about a few hours away from campus, and they were very polluted. To be able to track these effluents and where they were coming from, we thought satellite imagery could do this. But while working with what was existing today, we ran into a problem, which was that in most cases, satellite imagery was not good enough for a lot of use cases. We could see the crop health, but we couldn't identify crop species or soil health or a whole lot of other factors. So essentially, the opportunity was to be able to beam down much more information-rich imagery, much more high throughput imagery from space. And when we reached out to different companies that were using satellite imagery, this was verified. And we decided, I think there's an opportunity here. And the second is we had grown up in India. We had seen how ISRO had achieved tremendous amounts of success for not a lot of money, be it launching the Mars mission Mangalyaan for less than the cost of movie, The Martian, or even Gravity. We'd seen what limited resources can do. So we had the infrastructure, the talent, the experience in the country to be able to do something space-related from India for the globe. And I think it was these factors that combined and said, we can, I think, build a much better constellation of satellites and send it up there. The Hyperloop experience definitely provided us with the confidence that we could build this hardware as well.